We are very fortunate to have our friends from the IFC, who I will be introducing shortly, to share their knowledge and expertise with us this afternoon. At this juncture, I'm also elated to note and acknowledge the presence of no other than our Deputy Commissioner, Deputy Commissioner Erickson Balmes, and his classmates at the Asian Institute of Management, Mr. Richard Legarda, Randall Botero, Captain Lidon Del Rosario, Ms. Cheryl Joy Suarez, and Ms. Rosario Allen, as well as colleagues from the IC. We have Ms. Glenn Ortaliz, Francis Castillo, and Elizabeth Oria. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. I don't understand my own handwriting. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of our colleagues from Arise Philippines, headed by Mr. J.M. Montes. He is the project manager of the Building Resilience Index program, and he belongs to Resilient Philippines for IFC, seconded to IFC. Then we have, of course, Ms. Cha Almeida. She's from the Secretariat of Arise Philippines, of which PIRA is a proud member. And then we have Ms. Pearl Mars, who I will be introducing later. You'll be speaking as well, right? Okay, great. Now, without further ado, please allow me to introduce our main speaker, Mr. Angelo Tan, who's in front of us. Angelo Tan is the Philippine and Pacific Islands lead for the Green and Resilient Buildings Program at the International Finance Corporation, or IFC. IFC itself is a member of the World Bank Group and the largest global development finance institution focused on the private sector. In this role, he forges partnerships with various real estate stakeholders towards democratizing green and resilient buildings. Using excellence in design for greater efficiencies, or EDGE, in the Building Resilience Index, which he'll be talking about today, he channels capital towards more climate-smart investments. Angelo has a decade of real estate experience in mixed-use development management, commercial real estate advisory, and architecture business development. He's an industrial engineer and finished his Master of Sustainable Built Environment at the University of South Wales in Sydney. So ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Angelo Tan.
Thank you so much, Mitch, and thank you to PIRA for having us. It's our pleasure to be here with you today to talk about Building Resilience Index and to talk to you about the role of the insurance sector in improving disaster resilience for buildings. So we hope that this will not be a one-time event. We hope that after this presentation, we can engage with you as an association and also as individual organizations to scale up resilience in the built environment. So without further ado, I'm going to go into our presentation. Sorry. So I think it works now. Sorry about that. So we're the International Finance Corporation. So we're part of the World Bank Group. So how many of you have heard about IFC before? I see someone nodding his head, but World Bank, you're familiar with World Bank, no? So not a lot of people know that the World Bank Group is actually 5 distinct organizations. So in the Philippines, we have IBRD. So they work mainly with the public sector. So when you say World Bank, it's really IBRD. That's their name, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. But there's also the International Finance Corporation. So where IBRD or the World Bank works with the public sector, the International Finance Corporation works with the private sector. So those are 2 very distinct mandates. So in that sense, we work closely with insurance organizations, companies. We work with real estate developers. We work with financial institutions, practically all of the private enterprises, because we recognize the critical role of the private sector in bringing positive development impact to emerging markets like the Philippines. So that's us, IFC. And within IFC is a group called Climate Business Department. So that's where we're from, climate business. So why is it climate business? No? Because we invest in initiatives related to climate to help towards climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation in a variety of sectors. So you have climate smart agri, you have incorporating climate into financial institutions, and there's also incorporating climate change mitigation and adaptation in the building sector, so property development. So in my introduction, you heard that my background is in real estate development. I used to work with Ayala Land, I worked with CBRE, and also in architecture. Different roles within the property development industry. And my job now at the International Finance Corporation is to help developers, designers, building professionals, and insurance companies help transition the sector into one that's more climate smart, incorporating climate change mitigation and also adaptation as a way of channeling capital into more climate smart property development. So we are at a major crossroads in human history. You can see four, and this is a bit of a rich slide, but if I can ask you to focus on the four themes at the top now, you can see the first one is we recognize the urgency to curb greenhouse gas emissions. As you know, GHG emissions are increasing, leading to climate change. And the Philippines is actually an emerging emitter. And what it means to be an emerging emitter is that our GHG emissions are rising faster than our GDP growth. And so we have to do something about lowering our GHG emissions. When we talk about the property sector, that comes from the design and construction and also the operation of buildings. And we recognize the important role of the insurance sector in lowering these emissions by ensuring that our buildings are resilient. Because if you have more resilient buildings, then you can minimize the cost of repairs and reconstruction, and that can help lower emissions. The second one here is adapting to more frequent and intensified climate disasters. Earlier, Mitch mentioned that the Philippines now ranks number one according to the World Risk Index published in September of 2022. So we're now the country with the highest disaster risk in the world. And if you look at the climate risk index, other rankings of disaster-prone countries, we're always within the top 10. No? So it's something that, unfortunately, we are leading. So we're now the most vulnerable country in the world. And so we need to do something about it. The third component here is rapid urbanization. So we've already surpassed 50% of our population living in urban areas. And as the population increases in urban areas, and as we see more unplanned development, that also increases the vulnerability in our cities. And then finally, the digital revolution. So we're recognizing the important role of cell phones, the internet, computers, in improving how we do property development. And so we're bringing that innovation in the way that we manage risks for our buildings. So all of these, major things combined really motivates our work on Building Resilience Index. Building Resilience Index is an expansion of our work in EDGE. So I'm not sure if you've heard about EDGE. So it's a green building rating system. So if you know about LEED, I'm not sure if this is a LEED certified building. So it's like LEED, but EDGE was designed to address the needs of emerging markets. Because, for example, if I ask you, if you can name one LEED certified building, you'll probably say Zuwilig or some office tower in BGC or in Makati. And that's okay. These are very important projects. These are iconic projects that help present the case for green buildings. But the problem with that narrative is that it leaves out other types of developments. For example, housing, even affordable housing, which can also be built as green housing. So that's the rationale behind the development of EDGE. We're democratizing green buildings for developing countries like the Philippines. Now, if I can ask you to focus on the left side of the screen. So as we construct more buildings, that leads to more greenhouse gas emissions because you consume resources from the environment. In the process of construction, you emit carbon dioxide and other gases, greenhouse gases. And so that contributes to more greenhouse gas emissions. And as that contributes to increase in temperature, then we see climate change. And then like Manila is very hot, no? And so we continue to use air conditioning units. And that leads to a vicious cycle of increased temperature, rising emissions, and also cooling our indoor spaces. And we need to do something about that. So that's what we do in terms of mitigation and with EDGE Green Building Certification. But on the other side of that, as the climate changes, we're also seeing more climate hazards. We're seeing more frequent and more severe natural hazards. So the Philippines is already exposed to different types of disasters. And so we also need to acknowledge that climate change is already here. No? For other countries in the world, climate change is some vague concept, but I'm sure all of us have experienced in one form or another some type of disaster. I remember as a kid growing up in La Union, waking up to a typhoon and then rapidly, rising floodwaters. And I remember putting up some of our stuff on top of, pinapatong talaga namin sa furniture just to save them because of what was happening in La Union at that time. So all of us have experienced that, and we need to accept the reality that it's not just about climate change mitigation, it's also about climate change adaptation. So we've had a lot of success with EDGE certification in the Philippines. We've certified more than 1 million square meters of space. It is very successful in other countries as well. And we've been very successful at changing the narrative that green buildings are just for high-end iconic buildings. And we're now trying to replicate that approach with Building Resilience Index. And I'll tell you more about that. Another motivation for Building Resilience Index is that disasters are expensive. And I'm sure from the insurance industry, you know that many of our real estate assets are mostly uninsured. So there's really a gap that we can fill with our work on Building Resilience Index. And later on, I'll show you a slide on how we can collaborate with you on BRI. And again, the Philippines is a hotspot for disasters. We lie just to the to the west of the Pacific Ocean, where more than 90% of typhoons originate. And we lie on the Pacific Ring of Fire. And so we have volcanic eruptions, we have earthquakes. So when we were choosing the country to pilot Building Resilience Index, we chose the Philippines. And we're now rolling out this program to other countries like the Pacific Islands, Vietnam, Indonesia, and India. So it's going to become a very big global program, but the Philippines was selected as the pilot. And aside from the fact that the Philippines is prone to disasters and that assets are mostly uninsured, what happens in the end is that the cost of disasters is being shouldered by local communities. And this is something that we know in our barangays, in our own homes, that we shoulder the cost of damages coming from disasters. So when we were in the process of launching this program, we worked closely with Build Change to do an assessment of the market. And we found that there are several gaps in the market that we can fill. So there are three components here: people and policy, you have money, and you have technology. So under people and policy, and sorry for the small font here, we recognize that there's a challenge in terms of how we implement codes and construction, in terms of how we do our construction in our building codes now. You can see it's color red, so that's a gap that we need to fill. On the money side, we also recognize that there's significant underinvestment in resilient building design and construction. And then finally, in terms of technology, there's still a lack of knowledge. So for example, when you work with a real estate developer, and especially those who are doing affordable housing, they may have some very good understanding of of building codes, but that's about the limit of what they know. They don't know how to push the boundaries of what's considered resilient building design and construction. And so we bring building resilience index as a solution to these gaps in the market. So on to the meat of the presentation. So our work in building resilience index is governed by several different frameworks and reports that we published. I won't bore you with details, but I would like to emphasize that under the World Bank Group's Action Plan on Climate Change, Adaptation and Resilience, we recognize that there's a need to develop a new rating system to incentivize investments in adaptation and resilience and to improve tracking. And then in our climate change action plan, cities and buildings are one of the 5 key investment areas. And we also made direct references to building resilience index in the climate change action plan. Earlier this year, we also published the CCDR, Climate Change and Development Report for the Philippines. So it's a World Bank Group publication. I encourage you to look into it, where we also mentioned building resilience index. So all of these frameworks are guiding our work in terms of developing, launching, and implementing this program. So what is building resilience index, and how can you use it in the underwriting process, for example? So we call building resilience index as a hazard mapping and resilience assessment framework. So it's a bit of a mouthful, that tagline. That's our value proposition. But if you're curious, the building resilience index does 3 things for you. First, it helps to identify risks based on the location of your project. So who among you have used Hazard Hunter before? Hazard Hunter, no? I think a lot of us are using that from DOST. So we are working with DOST to incorporate Hazard Hunter into Building Resilience Index. So as you know, what Hazard Hunter does is when you identify the location of a project, it tells you what types of hazards are applicable for that project, based on its location. But we go beyond that. So once we have an understanding of the types of wind, water, fire, and geoseismic hazards that affect our project based on its location, then the Building Resilience Index program proposes mitigating measures in the way that we design and construct our buildings. So, for example, if the location is prone to flooding, Building Resilience Index will propose that the lowest floor of the building has to be elevated at a certain level. So there are around more than 100 mitigating measures that can be implemented to improve the resilience of a building based on its location. Building Resilience Index is underpinned by the BRI app. And after this presentation, we can engage with you as individual companies to teach you how to use the app. And what's very nice about it is that the BRI app is free to use, and a lot of our technical assistance is offered at no cost to you. So at the end of this presentation, we encourage you to please give your calling cards to us. We'll give you our calling cards so that we can engage with you directly. We're engaging with Malayan Insurance, for example. Anyone from Malayan here? So we are working with your teams. You have a Binondo project, you have a building there. BTY, no, ETY. So we are assessing the resilience of that building and also working with Malayan Insurance to see how you can incorporate BRI into your underwriting process. We are engaging with different insurance organizations across the world to see how we can develop this tool to be more useful for them. And that's what we want to do with you, to engage with you directly, one-on-one, show you how the tool works, to see how it can be improved so that it can support your underwriting process. And then after that, offer you technical advisory and your clients as well, the real estate developers. So it has a BRI app, and again, we'll teach you how to use that. Anyone who has a computer and an internet connection can use the BRI app. We'll provide you the link, but if you want to check, it's located at resilienceindex.com, and you can start using it for your project. And then we look at the physical integrity of the building and also operational continuity. So for example, for this building where we're at, we look at how the building complies with the NSCP, if the openings have wind-rated openings, flooding, equipment, important equipment, location from fault line, location from fire hazards. Again, more than 100 mitigating measures, and we teach you how to implement them for your project. Projects can be assessed and rated whether they're still under the design process. So for example, the BPI HQ, the BPI tower was torn down, and they're going to rebuild their new HQ there. So we're helping them develop that building in a way that's more resilient, but it can also be used to retrofit existing buildings. So for example, we look at this building where we're at, and we're gonna look at the existing plans, and propose measures to improve its resilience. And finally, whether you implement the resilience measures or not, we propose a way of disclosing the resilience of buildings. So it's a letter grade rating system that tells you the resilience level of a building. The goal here is to provide a common language that various stakeholders can understand. So for example, the building is a B-rated building. We hope that real estate developers can understand that, insurance companies can understand that and incorporate in your insurance underwriting, financial institutions when they approve loans, the public sector when they approve development permits, and all of these stakeholders. So it's unifying language. And we rate buildings from a scale of NR to AA. So NR refers to buildings that are not rated or not resilient to natural hazards. B, A, and then AA. So AA is world-class buildings. B and A are buildings that are compliant to local construction code, whether they're outdated or updated. And then the plus sign refers to operational continuity measures. So a building can be B plus, or A plus, or AA plus. All of these ratings correspond to the PML, to the probable maximum loss, when a disaster actually happens. And we hope that the insurance companies can use this to inform how you might program your premium, for example. Because knowing, for example, that the building is an AA building, then that will ensure that the building will be able to sustain damages, will not sustain damages from disasters. So that's what the rating system looks like. We'll share with you a copy of this presentation so that you can use it on your own. And again, we can engage with you individually moving forward. So we have a video here that tells you about building resilience index. I'm not sure if the audio will work, but let's see. Yeah, let's see if the audio will work. So this is part of our promotional video when we launched this program in the fourth quarter of 2020. I think was when we did the soft launch. And we also have another initiative called Building Resilience Commitment Campaign, and we'll tell you more about it. So I'm just checking if our audience joining virtually can see the video. So that's the video presentation. Let me just switch to presenter mode for the virtual audience. Sorry, thank you. So we'll share with you the link to the video after the presentation and also to the rest of the presentation slides para if you can watch it on your own. And then happy to answer any questions that you have. So what you're seeing on the screen at the moment is the way that we identify hazards. No? So I mentioned earlier that you can use the BRI app. And this is the first screen that you'll see. It will show you this map. And then you can just type in the address for your project, for your building, or drop a pin. And it will tell you what are the different wind, water, fire, and geoseismic hazards that affect your project. Similar to Hazard Hunter now. That's exactly how it works. So again, we're working with the technical team of the OST to incorporate the level of detail that you have with Hazard Hunter. Actually, when we were in the process of developing the mapping, we were consulting with, at that time, USEC Solidum for Sinamabi, Kabulogan, if you know her, on incorporating that hazard mapping.
Angela, does it also print out reports?
Yes. I'll show you later how the report looks like, and we hope you'll be able to use it. Ayan. Working na. Kasi I'm also checking para sa virtual audience if it's displaying properly. Ayan. So once you have an understanding of the different wind, water, fire, and geoseismic hazards, it will start to propose mitigating measures. No? So I mentioned more than 100 mitigating measures. So who among the audience works in the technical team of the insurance organization? Yeah, so we can engage with you, sir, moving forward, teach you how to use it. Could someone close the dialog box? Um, uh, so that's the user guide, and then you have the BRI app and all of our technical assistance. No? Again, the number of mitigating measures proposed will depend on the different hazards that affect the project. So kung hindi naman, if the project is not prone to flooding, it will not propose measures for flooding. Once you explore the more than 100 mitigating measures, you will see that location is very important. So for wind, for water, whether it's located in a historically flood prone area, yung projects that are in reclamation areas will not be rated with a perfect score, for example, because that adds vulnerability to the project, as you know. For geoseismic, of course, location from the fault line, it looks at that. If it's within a certain number of kilometers within the fault line, then it will not get a very good score. Again, the goal is to inform where projects are being located, and once projects are located, they've identified the project location to also inform what methods in construction can be employed to improve their resilience. And then the way that the buildings are rated is based on the weakest link principle. You can see on the screen a couple of projects. This project is rated A, and this project is rated B. So we look at the lowest rating among all of the 4 hazard categories, and that's the overall rating for the project. So for a project to reach double A, which is the highest rating, it has to be double A on all of the 4 hazard categories. Based from our experience, it's very difficult to reach double A right now because we look for seismic-based isolation, for example, for geoseismic hazards. As you know, Philippines is very earthquake prone, but I don't think there are a lot of buildings in the Philippines that have seismic-based isolation technology. So we encourage developers to use technologies like that. But again, an A rating is okay, a B rating is okay. It means that they're compliant with construction codes, but we leave it to you. It is within your power what rating you will incentivize. So for example, if a project is A rated, magkano yung premium? So something like that could be how you can use this tool. So Mitch was asking about the report. So this is what the report looks like. As insurance associations, if you have clients that are using Building Resilience Index, you will be provided a snapshot of what their rating looks like from the app. And they also have the option to share that with you within the app. It will show what's the overall rating, the name of the project, and whether it's verified or not. I'll tell you more about verification later. It also provides you with a project overview, so how much the project costs, number of floors, number of square meters, where the project is in terms of its design or construction, and other details like that. So this can be exported as a PDF document. And as insurance companies, you can make this a requirement for their submittals, for example. So as part of our business development and marketing activities, so again, it gives us great honor that the Philippines was selected as the pilot for Building Resilience Index. We launched this program called Building Resilience Commitment. So it's a campaign, it's a resilience pledge where we ask for pledges from real estate developers in the Philippines to parang it's a pledge to use Building Resilience Index for their projects. So initially, we set a target of 1 million square meters, but we've received pledges of around 1.8 million square meters. So we almost doubled that target. And these are just some of the developers that initially pledged to use BRI. As you can see, you have Yuchenko group of companies here. We're working with them, and then other developers. But we've expanded this list now. So this initiative was launched in the fourth quarter of 2021, and since 2022 and 2023, we've added more developers that are using Building Resilience Index. This is a copy of the press release on the IFC website. So I think it sends a very positive message, and hope we can work with the insurance sector as well. We also launched the Resilience Hackathon. So this is an initiative for students and early professionals to design solutions for a more resilient built environment in the Philippines. You can see PBOX was part of that. Our donors, we have Arise here, the Australia New Zealand Chamber, and AIM. We have friends from AIM here now, so we work closely with them. So that's the Resilience Hackathon. Also, AIM Dado Banatang Sinapril. And during the process, we uncovered some very interesting concepts that can be scaled up as businesses, startup ideas. So these projects are using building resilience index as well. So that's on the building, so it's a business development side. But we want to also share with you that we are now expanding building resilience index. You can see here, this is like a matrix that shows the vulnerability and the exposure of different countries. As you know, the Philippines ranks quite highly, and we have Vanuatu, PNG, some of the Pacific Islands. I am going to Fiji end of the month to start promoting this as well. And as we know, a lot of the Pacific Islands and the Caribbean countries have high levels of exposure then. So we've identified like a second wave of pilot countries for launching the Resilience Index. Pretty soon you will see BRI in Vietnam, India, Indonesia, Dominican Republic, and then it will become a global program. My ask from you is that even during the pilot of BRI here in the Philippines, I hope we can already work with you. And these are going to be great case studies that we can promote in other countries. So for example, we can say that, in the Philippines, we worked with Malayan Insurance to incorporate this as part of their underwriting. And then we can use it as a case study when we start promoting in other countries. Our collaboration with Arise, for example, is something that we're very proud of. We're using it to promote in other countries, working with civil society organizations, and we hope to work with the insurance sector as well. I don't think I need to dwell on this, but we know that for every dollar we invest or every peso we invest in resilience, it leads to more savings. Because we avoid repairs related to reconstruction, costs related to repairs and reconstruction. So whether you adopt a code or you go above the code, different levels of savings. But one thing we know is that if we invest in resilience today, we save a lot of money in the future. And again, the insurance sector can play a role. This is what our program looks like and how we collaborate with different organizations. So you will be here with financial institutions. So for example, we're talking to banks, for example, BPI or China Bank, so that building resilience index can be used in evaluating loans, for example, or even mortgage products on the consumer side. So projects, the bank can use BRI to evaluate the resilience of a project, and maybe they can bring down interest rates or improve the tenor of the loans, for example. With the insurance sector, we hope you can use Building Resilience Index to improve the underwriting process. I'm sure you have existing tools to look at NatCat exposure. We're not, aspiring to replace those tools, but since this is a free tool, you can use it to complement your existing tools. And again, we provide a lot of technical advice for you. I mentioned earlier that we work with the biggest names in property development, Ayala, Philinvest, Mega World, Robinson's Land, all of those. So when you decide to use this, you're assured that you have a pipeline of resilient building projects. And we can do cross referrals for business development as well. When we work with financial institutions and the building sector, we can provide investment. So for example, with Ayala Corporation, we provide a $100 million social bond that's now being used to construct the first green hospital in the country. And in the same way, we can also invest in and provide advisory for banks and developers, maybe to, as adaptation financing to create more resilient buildings. The green part talks about how we work with the public sector. So, for example, we're working with NHMFC to create a secondary mortgage product that uses Building Resilience Index. We just came from Cebu. We talked with some local government officials who are interested in potentially piloting this in the development permit process. No? Maybe they can have a fast lane for projects that are assessed using Building Resilience Index. And then the fourth component is the app development itself. So this is the key takeaway from this presentation. So this is really our call to action. Please, this is a small fund. We'll just share the presentation after. But how can we work with you? So the first one is we would like to, of course, in collaboration with PIRA, to develop an insurance working group. We know that you already have a technical working group, but we would like to be part of that to ensure that we have a platform for seeing how we can complement your existing tools and how we can also improve Building Resilience Index to be more useful to you as insurance companies. We can also work with you one-on-one, like what we're doing with Malayan. We can work with you. Maybe one way of doing that is if you can identify a pilot set of real estate buildings that you're covering and then introduce us to the developers, we can help assess those projects. Again, to be part of the underwriting process for your insurance processes. We can do case studies. So I mentioned we can identify pilot projects, and again, we can showcase this collaboration through a global stage. And then finally, portfolio transition. We can work on your projects that you've insured, but we can also work on your own buildings. So we can do NHB building certification or BRI assessment for your project. So different modalities of working with you. And again, we encourage you to reach out to us and we're happy to work directly with you. And again, we want to create a virtuous cycle of resilient building design, construction, and finance. For construction developers, for banks, again, insurance companies, again, we want to complement your existing CAD modeling tools with a multi-hazard approach that also looks at how we design and construct our buildings. We would like to help you assess the resilience of your existing portfolio and your upcoming portfolio, and again, save time and resources on project evaluation processes. I know there's a lot of resources that goes into this. You look at the buildings and then you send people on site to evaluate, but we can help you save some of those resources because of all of our technical assistance. Benefits to local governments, to the national government, and ultimately to property buyers and owners and the occupants of this building, to give them assurance that they are living in or working in a building that's more resilient to natural hazards. So it has a lot of benefits to everyone, and hopefully we can work with you. You might be curious why we're offering this assistance for free. And the reason is that, again, as part of the World Bank Group, our mission is to eliminate extreme poverty and boost shared prosperity. Building Resilience Index program is supported by the government of the Netherlands, the Australian government, and the Rockefeller Foundation, and all of these experts. You might know some of them: FM Global, GFDRR, will change the amount of Resilience Action Plan, and of course our partners, Arise, who are joining us today. So these donors are providing our funding. And that's the reason why we're able to offer a lot of our technical assistance for free. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Maybe as a next step, we can visit you in your office or invite you to our office here in BGC at the IFC office so that we can talk about how we can complement your existing tools. So that's really the end of the presentation. We have a survey link at the end. For some reason, my clicker is not working. But if you could go to that, we'd like to ask you to answer a quick survey. so that we can improve the delivery of our presentations and our tool. So it's just a 1 minute survey. It's just around 5 questions. And hopefully you can answer that survey. So while we're waiting for that, I think we can open the floor for questions. I think aside from you asking us your questions, we would also like to understand what are your priorities. Maybe tell us how we can potentially tweak this tool so that it can be useful for you, and how we can engage with you moving forward. So we have microphones here, and we're gonna open the floor for questions. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Francis Papa from the IIAP.
Hi, Francis.
I have a couple of questions. Number one is, I understand that you are doing some collaborations with the public sector. And I just wanted to ask, do you by any chance coordinated with the Climate Change Commission?
No, we're not. We did not consult with the CCC. We occasionally attend events and meetings, but I think that's a good idea. How do you think we can collaborate with the CCC? Under what work streams?
We've invited the CCC in some of our events.
Yeah.
And we heard a lot of good things, good strategies and good plans out there. And I think they have an issue with implementation. And but I know that they're also somehow supported by the World Bank.
Yes, yes.
If I'm not mistaken. So I think that's one of the things that can really boost your achieving your objectives, because they are incorporating their climate change strategies with the local governments. So you mentioned that there's one local government that you talked to, and so yeah, I think if the main initiator of climate risk management is the CCC, I think we'll get a good idea to touch base with them. My second question is, you mentioned hazard hunter, and the way you explained your objectives and the process very, very clearly. And I think isn't it exactly the same as what happened in 2020? Because in my last presentation, I heard from the uh, from, Secretary Secretary, that is what we have been explaining to us now is what they were achieved and at a certain point. I think it is something that's the your the BRI or is it exactly?
So thank you. So yeah, thank you, Francis. Those are excellent points. So on the first point, yeah, I think the CCC, that would be a great area of collaboration, especially as the NDCs for the Philippines are informed by more adaptation rather than mitigation. So I think our friends at Arise in Resilient PH can engage in that conversation. And you're right, it's mainly the World Bank that works with the CCC because it's a public sector organization, but we can also engage with them. So if we can go to them together, I think that would be a great partnership. On the second point, so there's a similarity in the sense that both BRI and Hazard Hunter start with location-based hazard mapping. But then the difference is that BRI goes beyond that. So as you know, for BRI, once you have an understanding of the location-based hazards, it proposes mitigating measures in the way that you construct your building. And that's something that Hazard Hunter does not do. And then after that, Building Resilience Index also rates the resilience of the project according to the level-based system, which is something that hazard countries want to do. No? Sir Francis, maybe if you can elaborate more, how does an insurance company use Hazard Hunter? So you generate a report now from Hazard Hunter, and then
I'll answer.
yes,
Hello. An underwriter usually uses a report that a hazard hunter turns out and uses it in his underwriting process because it tells you what is relating to a whole life, what is the 100-year experience or history relative to fraud, or it also gives you an idea of the maximum typhoon signal or wind speed that's happening in the particular location. So all these things you need to factor in when you come up with a video rate.
yeah, I think that's very helpful. And then after you do that, how do you, I know you also look at how the buildings are constructed.
Yes, you take that in conjunction with the other underwriting information.
So you have the map of the report from Hazard Hunter. And then after that, you look at the building plans and you do on-site audit.
Well, sometimes a hazard hunter helps because you don't have to do an on-site audit anymore. That together with Google Maps gives you all the information that you would be getting if you visited the site itself. So it becomes some sort of a shortcut for underwriting. So it cuts down on costs.
Yeah, okay, that's good. So I think in that way, we sort of provide a one-stop shop for you because we look at hazard mapping and then we propose the mitigating measures. We look at how the buildings are constructed, and after that, it gives you a rating. So all of that in one report, I think, is how we can use it.
Thank you, thank you. Actually, I have one question.
Yes.
Actually, one question and two observations, which maybe you can say with observations correctly.
Yes.
First question is, will there be a separate rate for each element? Like, is there a rate for flooding, a rate for earthquake?
There will be separate rating for each of the four hazard categories. So there's a rating for wind, water, fire, and geoscience.
But then it's it's averaged out and you get the lowest.
Actually, if you look at the measures, there's a rating for each individual measure. You can see in the longer version of the report. Yeah, so you can look at that, but then you can also look at the per hazard category rating or the overall.
Okay, now on to the observations. Aside from a clear connection to underwriting, which we just discussed, the BRI can possibly assist with an insurance company's compliance to ORSA. ORSA, as you know, is one of the requirements of the World Bank, and it stands for Own Risk Self-Assessment, right? Now, obviously, the business that we write is the risk that we take on for the company. And having it rated already under the BRI can already help us assess the risk. So it's a tool that insurance companies can also use in coming up with the worst reports, right or wrong?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not familiar with the ORSA, but I can look into it. But it sounds like, yeah, ORSA compliance. I'll look into it and then I'll get back to you. You mentioned it's a World Bank work.
Yes. And the second observation I have, our current building code is designed to save lives, not necessarily to ensure the building or one still stand, right? So the BRI shows us buildings that go beyond this, and it may be a very risk for insurance. We create them, say, hey, that needs to go beyond um, the normal people, right?
Yeah, that's right. And you couldn't have said it, I couldn't have said it better because that's what we keep saying when we do the building resilience index presentation. It looks at how you reduce damages for buildings because when disasters actually happen, people still need to go back to the buildings. So I think that's really a space that you are like.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mitch. Those are very helpful and I'm taking notes. Are there any other questions? Or, yes. Mitch. So, please, introduce yourself if you're ready.
I'm with the Spanish Education. Actually, I have during uh, where do you get your map? What
Okay, so we have our technical specialist, Pearl, and she can provide you more insights on the technical details. Or you can,
maybe I can introduce Pearl.
yeah, yeah, maybe let's introduce Pearl.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're also very happy to have Ms. Pearl Morris with us. She has a wide range of experience. She currently is with the IIFC, of course, as a technical specialist for the BRI, but she also worked for the UP Training Center for Applied Geodesy and Photogrammetry. That's a mouthful. She's a specialist for LiDAR, a LiDAR survey. She also worked as a business development officer for Green Commercial Services, and she was also senior science research specialist for data acquisition component. She also worked for the UNDP Philippines as a technical consultant working on project climate Twin Phoenix, resilience and preparedness towards inclusive development. She finished her Master's of Science, MS in Environmental Science and Policy at the Central European University. And of course, she's a proud graduate of UP Diliman with a bachelor's degree on geography. So ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Pearl Morris.
Thanks very much. I think that's a good segue to how I can answer the question. So I have a background in that. So anyway, the maps that we are using in the app po. So it's combination of global maps available. So from OpenStreetMap, global hazard data, so national maps, and at the same time, the partnership with the USDC box. So that's why we are using Hazard Handler Philippines map. So that's basically that's the basis for the hazard data that we have on the app.
So, you know,
Yes, technically, but we know the limitation of the MGB maps. So medyo ano siya, medyo general yung attack. But then again, with BRI kasi, since it's more on the climate change adaptation, medyo conservative yung mga projections na nakalagay sa kanya.
what do you mean?
Meaning that when we look at the hazards that the app shows, we look at the hazard and not specific on how frequent would be the yung magiging frequency ng hazard dun sa area. So it's ano po, yung kumbaga, you are looking at the risk of the on the hazard, on the specific hazard and not the frequency of it. Kasi we know naman na yung with climate change kasi we don't know what will gonna happen. I mean it's all projections and we want to ensure or not ensure, we want that the data that's available at the app is basically addressing the risk for the disasters.
For hazard identification. We use global map, we have granular kung tawagin siya. Actually, mas granular pa nga yung local natin. So, yun meron talaga dito. So, this was final. Kung meron kang granular.
So we understand po yung part na yun, yung granularity. But then again, that's one of the limitations, of course, that we are looking at it. Unless there's gonna be more updated maps na bring that, then we can incorporate it in the app. But as of the moment, we are using hazard Philippines and po. And when you make cases na that, that's what we are using also in the app.
Okay.
So that's one of the further. But of course, we can improve it as we go along.
Yes, we will continue to update maps because as we know, climate change continues to happen. But we would like to know more about that. So if there are any maps that you share couldn't reach this, we can engage with you directly. Yeah, we can.
That's one reason why they're reaching out to the insurance, so that your map nila will be more responsive to the needs of the insurance industry. Yeah.
Pero siyempre, tama lang yung ginagawa ng agency natin. Bago lang natin mag-update ito. So, ang isang walang map tayo, if you notice, wala tayong lightning hazard. Zero. So, isang kailangan natin. Even the code, lightning protection is optional. So, we might want to add that also.
Joey, which ones are the most granular maps that you're currently using?
We still use the local. Yung kila MDB, kila Patasa, kila Pibo. They're right on the ground. You use the Unicre, the Swiss Re, and the other CRI map.
Yeah, we totally agree with that.
Wala pa rin eh.
And since we're doing the pilot in the Philippines, actually, maps, local maps, really great.
Can you imagine context based on all those maps?
Just like that. Tama naman. Tama naman.
Everything dynamic. How do you
That's why I was asking. Baka mayroong mas maganda sila expert internet eh.
Yeah. But I think we offer more at this point than we offer. But again, this is an ongoing collaboration, right? If there's any other resource that you think we should use, please let us know. And we're happy to do a meeting after this. Yeah, Joe, you still have another question?
I think that's primary.
No, that's really useful. I think that's really the goal of doing this meeting, to understand your needs.
Yeah. Those other maps are all na lang yan. Guide lang yan.
Yes.
But when you look at, for us kasi we look at the property that we look at it.
Yeah.
So sometimes different.
Yeah. Joey, from your experience of using these existing maps, when disasters actually happen, parang mali ba yun? What actually happens after you insure a property?
Well, for us, when we do risk assessment, we apply yung engineering requirements ng bill. Nakakaiwas kami sa big or catastrophic event.
Yeah.
Lang yun sa amin. Nakukontrol namin.
Yeah.
So, in terms of managing our risks as an insurance company, our financial risk, we are able to use those to guide us kung ano yung dapat kong insure at dapat hindi. At pinamanage mo rin yung accumulation mo. Yun yung benefit sa amin. But if you're asking, ano effect customer, it's largely depends on them. Sometimes if you have a recommendation, they don't follow or they don't appreciate.
Or they don't know how to do it.
Well, in my opinion, we need to educate.
Yeah. And that's where we can come in, no? Kasi we provide technical assistance to the developers.
People has been trying to educate. Meron silang meron siyang program na say how to evaluate your building kung earthquake resilient siya.
Right.
Pero kulang pa.
Yeah.
Hindi pa na-inject sa utak ng mga tao because when we interview customers, they really don't.
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah.
So, it starts from there. Kailangan, for me, parang dapat nag-evaluate na eh. Ang problem sa atin, operating na yung mga properties. And you're talking about projects. So, pre-construction yun. Mas marami yung gawa na. So, during the impact, dapat ang risk natin, hindi mo magawa na. Kasi,
Actually, that's a very valid point. And how we launch the building resilience management campaign, actually more than half of those projects are existing projects. So they're using building resilience index to see how they can retrofit. Although it might be challenging to retrofit.
For your index system to be widely accepted.
Yeah.
And understood.
Yeah.
Not just understood.
Yeah, and that's the reason why we work across the real estate ecosystem. So this actually mentioning we engaged with you a bit later in the process. We first engaged with developers and financial institutions. At the side, we're also engaging with the public sector. So we're meeting OBO, you mentioned permits, no, to also educate them on what to look for in projects, for new projects. So that's why we offer all of that technical assistance, and the user guides. It's very recognize it's not just with one entity, no, we need to work across the
Practices ng the content, the model,
Yeah.
you can stop it.
Right, right.
If government would like to use standards instead of that for so again, implementation is static.
Yeah.
It's easy to do paperwork, do a book of things, but the problem then
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. Actually, what you're saying was the findings from the field change report, that I showed here, implementation during construction, and then you mentioned lack of knowledge, yung sa baba, and then yung significant underinvestment yung sa months, right? So those are the correct points. So this is the link to our survey that LY/IFC-Vera, and then you can just take a picture of the QR code and it will take you to our survey link. Please, if you can answer our surveys, we'll share the resources after you answer the survey. But if you could do this now, because I'd like to switch to the app to see to make you to show you how it works. I will switch dun sa browser and dun sa laptop. But in the meantime, we can answer more questions. So please go ahead.
one of so add one more.
Yes.
You indicated kanina na you're doing this because para ma-reduce mo yung construction cost, right? Or repair cost, you need to add yung impact of it.
Yeah.
Yung interruption, loss of profit, even reputation risk. Mas naiintindihan namin ni Ate yun.
Yeah.
Let's say, mawala siya sa market, hindi siya makabangon ulit, wala napunta sa kalaban yung negosyo, yung business. So, yun yung naiintindihan ng customer.
Yeah.
Kasi yung pa-construct, pa-repair, lang yan eh. Pero yung mawala yung negosyo niya, that's more important.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very good.
This is a question from the online site. Is building resilience index certification system?
Yes. So it's what we call it is a self-assessment with third-party validation. So it's not a certification by ISP. President will tell you more about the verification process and why we call it self-assessment with third-party verification.
So, nabanggit naman natin sa self-disclosure system. So, unlike, I think, when I mentioned kanina yung edge programs, it's the certification system of IFC. With the BRI, it's more a self-disclosure system. So, the process entails the first step is the assessment first. So, anyone from the technical team can do it. So, even the admin staff, if they're very knowledgeable about the design of the building, then you can do the inputting. So, the inputting lang naman po yung pinag-take ng mga measures. So, basically, they will respond lang if the mitigation measures are extended or not into the building. So, after the assessment, papasok na din yung verification. So, the verification, basically, it will validate the measures. So a highly technical, highly expert in the field of construction will do the validation. So qualification on they must be co-responsible for staff. So either licensed engineer or architect can do it as long as they have at least 10 years of experience in the construction sector. So basically, ang gagawin ng verifier, titignan niya yung kada measure. So i-validate niya if those measures are really in the building. And then they must also upload some evidence to support it. So pag naman dinaan ng verifier or nag-a-assess yung mga measures, basically malalaman na kung yung mga hinahanap na parang evidence pass. So for example, let's say for fire rated windows. So basically, they will upload let's say some product spec of the glass that they have put up in the building. So you can verify it. So the verification system, kailangan lang ng dalawang sign off ng technical person. So once meron ng validation from two verifier, then verified yung building. So that's the difference between an unverified and the verified building. So the verified building, of course, would have more weight because we can the elections have already looked at the documentation and the mitigation measures. So that's something already that I think that would hold more on presence, let's say, presence company as insurance and as you think that so yun yung magiging use ng disclosure system.
We also provide verifier training, so some more in-depth technical training. And that is something that we can provide to insurance companies. So if you want to have an internal verifier within their company, we can do that training. And you have more confidence that the inputs are so
Hi, good afternoon.
good afternoon.
So it's related to the just right. So regarding so will you say all the sites that you will be picking up? So what IFC will do is that magkakaroon ng mga random testing throughout the pag matapos yung mga verified na assets, verified na mga buildings into the app kasi hindi pa mas lalabas doon. So yung so our system currently would do some random sampling lang ng mga buildings and assets. So that's how we are basically managing the verification system.
Yeah, it takes a lot of resources on our part. So, but maybe that's something we can work with you because I know that you do on-site audits. For each of the projects.
It
Or-
depends.
Okay.
So in addition to that, how frequent you update your building? Because for example, one building is rated B and they want it to get the double A rating. So they will retrofit or they do some improvements in their building. So how frequent is the update?
Yeah, so for the developers right now, they can do up to 2 additional versions of their current project. But we encourage them to not do like small retrofit and area that it takes a lot of time. So we encourage them to do major retrofits, do that next assessment, and they have one an additional. But nothing stopping them from creating a new project and just creating a new assessment after they do the retrofits. We encourage users to look at their assessment again every 10 years. No, we don't really have a number.
10 years.
Every 10 years, we revisit to account for increasing severity of disasters. But we don't really prescribe a number of years less than that. But from your perspective as an insurance company, how do you do that for your project?
For example, that when we send their side, so we actually make some laws and consultation on actually using on the observation from the surveys. So after that, we actually if that recommendation is really required based on our parameters. So we actually do that the next year.
Okay.
That's this is a checklist table like the recommendation.
Recommendation.
And to add also,
Usually, so once the project is verified na, the project is also required to undergo another round of assessment and verification if, let's say, some major event has happened. For example, let's say another event will happen. So required yung building na i-assess and verify again, just to look at the damages has been incurred during the event.
Yeah, so just to clarify, you propose retrofits, mitigating measures, and then you revisit whether
It depends, and also sometimes discussion with the client because retrofitting retrofitting means capital expenditure.
Right. Is that the same for everyone else? Ganun din ba for other insurance companies? More or less. Well, the good thing is for BRI, you can do that. So they can come up with an initial assessment, do the retrofits, and then they have a second version of that project. So you have two versions of that report. You can do it. Right. Right. Yeah, that's very useful. That's very useful.
Yeah, and then I'm ready to use it. My question is, with the facility reports that we are doing, with the health documentation measures that we give to the client, there is a timeline. We provide timeline. Actually, we have the training. We can do it within 3 months, within 6 months. Sometimes it's not annual, but it's capital expense.
Right. Yeah.
So we put a timeline. For the other reports that we will producing, there is also there will be timeline on the proposed measures.
So there's no timeline. You can create 3 assessments per project, and then it's up to you, no? You can see naman yung rate of the assessment. So you can, depending on your procedures, you can inform the developer, you need an assessment for today, and then after you do the first set of retrofits, after 3 months, for example, and then after 6 months, the PRI has not been completed. And then again, there will be an update on that. So you can see. Then again, for each of the assessments, there will be a verification. It's up to you. The good thing is the tool is pretty flexible, and you can use it depending on your protocols.
Also privacy. I think comprehensive privacy tool. How will you BRI depending on the privacy?
So right now, building resilience index computes the probable maximum loss due to damages from the disasters that affect the project. We look at the cost of construction for the building. How do you do it for your price? How does it?
Sometimes, most of the time, it's very a loss with the that's why
Yeah, well, yeah, so that's what BRI does. It looks at the probability of loss only. And again, it's up to you if you want to use that number or on the side you can do your own computations.
and can modify the BRI.
Yeah, actually, you'd be interested to see how that works, and then we can figure it out. We can incorporate.
Yes, if I can. What we have here is a tool that the IFC created, but which we can tweak and use. As we mentioned, the first time you survey it was already tells you that the hazards that you probably have or are facing, and you can, it's like a survey report already ready done for you, just in the for those items that you need to back that, right? And then for risk survey, It also helps you because nandun yung mga recommendations, ititweet mo na lang kung paano mo sasabihin sa kliyente mo o siguro titignan mo kung ano yung angkop sa kanila o angkop sa budget nila. Pero at least meron na kayong pinagmumulan. So, maraming magagawa itong report na ito na tulong sa insurance company para i-address yung risk. Not so much the pricing. Pricing kasi yung iba type 99. But it gives you a starting point already. All right? And then, I was going to say also that it also helps the insured because then probably for those A-rated or A+, and bibigyan natin we have a justification to lower the rates. Kasi mas magandang risk. It goes beyond just the building code. So we have justification to bring the risks down. I mean, to bring the rates down. Maintindihan ng regulators natin. That's why they're here also in the same group. We're all on the same page. Anything that's new that we're working on, ano
So project can choose to publish the rating, but by default, it is not publicly available. Yes, they can use it for promotion. But then insurance companies can also make it a mandatory requirement. Oh, we need to see your BRI rating. Nasa ba siya? So that's something they can do. Yeah, that's the tool. And speaking of tools, it's very great. So if we can look at maybe pilot projects in your portfolio, we can do an assessment, no? And then show us how you computed the pricing, and then let's see if we can help incorporate it. No? We'll tell you if kaya ng resources. Otherwise, at the moment, it's still parang you do it outside of the tool. But that's happy to engage with you currently. Yes, Joe.
If you use the app, where does the information come?
Yes, so it's stored within the databases, but it's confidential data. Yeah, of course. Yeah, and we are governed by the same data privacy.
Can we make an arrangement that well, we can
Yes.
a way that you can input our information to be safe our servers instead of your server by the way.
You input your information on projects of developers.
Well, particular property. Tapos, ano kasi, we don't want our information lying around.
Yeah, of course.
Make sure your information in your app that they overlay their information. Inform when it comes to
Yeah, well, right now they're stored in our servers, but let me check if that's possible.
Yeah, yun problem.
But yeah, when it comes to confidentiality, super secure naman. These are the work factors.
And when you mentioned kanina yung rating or yung PML, is that PML per risk factor, like PML for earthquake, PML of course flood, PML fire. Ganun ba?
Yes, because there's a better rating for each of the hazard categories that corresponds to the PML. I think this question to
Ano ba naman yung risk sa or available existing.
We, of course, that's an aspiration of the buildings process. But until the developers actually want to assist the projects, hindi sila lalabas. But that's a vision. But we have, I think we have two published projects already.
Yeah, supposedly very sa may ginagawa sa design kasi two projects, two residential projects. So both verified, but the other one, hindi pa ginagawa sa design. So that's why namin yung verified building.
Yeah.
But two residential ratings are verified.
They tend to not publicize their ratings kasi they want to get the perfect score. They really do that. But they are there. And if you require it from them, I'm sure they'll do the rating.
Today, design, small lang, residential houses, they will be, kailangan ko design sa or existing na sila.
Yeah, they have to create an account. So individual users can register under an organization. So for example, Imperial Homes Corporation is one of those projects that assess, they have a project in Via Verde, Trece Martinez, Cavite, and Patrick Villa in and parang B rating. Sorry, A, B, yung rating nila, which is okay. And they made it public already. But under Imperial Homes as an organization, there are several people with their own individual accounts. So we don't go and pay accounts for everyone or project assessments. They have to go in and pay their own. But then, for example, who are your clients? Are they more residential or okay? Yeah, you can include this part of your business development. So, for example, if you're pitching to a group of potential clients, we can join your presentation.
So, your grades, because kailangan silang requirement or dito na iyan, kailangan mo price per outcome. So, madali na po grades per outcome. Because wala pa rin interview ba? So, madali na po grades.
Yeah, madali na. And we show the process. We'll show you how to work. But the registration takes around 30 seconds. Okay, so pretty much just tell them, oh, when you submit your documents, you need to register on this website, assess your project, and set that as part of your something else documentary requirement. And again, it's PPUs. So we'll show it, and then although if you share your screens, para makita yung virtual activities. So we can both see it. So this is the website. It's called resilientindex.org. Sorry, it's not .com, it's .org. So you can sign up. So this is what the landing page looks like. So promotional videos, stories and publications. And then at the very bottom there you can see some publications. So for what is being done? And then we can go to the other tab. You have Explore. So this is where you can see some of the projects. You can see meetings, but pretty soon you'll see projects. And then this is where you see project number of population. So for example, this is the other and you play the other. So they see. So if you take the time to publish the this is where you. But the tendency is project Imperial Homes use the old rating system, but we're now using the different. And then you have stories about entries, publications, and then resources where you can get some technical guidance with regard what this is for you. So let's show them maybe how to sign up. So if you click the sign up button on the upper right, you just need to put in your username or email address, your email, password, confirm password, and click take account. Or at the bottom, you can create an account using Google, Microsoft. And that's as easy as you already know. So maybe yeah, let's log in. So that's my login. Um, so this is where the projects will be listed. And then on the upper right there, you can see the projects that you have, your organizations, portfolio, and your profile. And then the blue button where new project, where you can access them. So let's click new project. So when you click that, you go to the project manager, you choose an organization, maybe you can be a host developer if you're a developer. And then put a project name. And then for assessment purpose, it can be for let's do a test project. It can be just self review, it can be for research, it can be for insurance or delivery. So please select insurance for example. Yeah, and then project management is just a description of the project. Then we can set project type. So we can do any type of project as long as it has four walls and the roof. You can assess the basic building. So in this case, we let's do an office project.
You can look at the existing structures.
Right. Yes. And as early as schematic design, they can already start doing this for your project. So before you construct, even when it's under operation. So you can use your current location if you're in the building. Sorry, I think I disabled you geolocation, but you can type in that. Yeah, you can select that. So it's like having computer, that's just how it works. And then it's going to show you the assessment of the project. Next. So it's now identifying the different types of concepts that affect a certain. Yeah. And then you select the stage. So if it's design, post-construction, or operational building, project costs, total floor area, number of floors above ground, and number of years of building operation. So just very basic project details. Year of building completion. And then yeah, so if you've done major renovations, that is an optional. Then you can create the project. So it takes a while to load up. Okay. So sometimes we do an update on the app. It, it's normally not like that. Sorry. Maybe it's just show that existing, just to show that when we did that. Yeah, it happens like half a day in a week. May get maintenance, but I'm not sure it should not be like that. And again, it's one of those cases where if you're having trouble with the app, just email us or send us a fiber message, and we'll let you know what's happening. So, for example, for this one, let's just look at the current assessment. Let's go to the assessment page. So this is a simulated building. It's what's related to the whole building system. So it's all mitigating measures. So this is where you see all of the individual mitigating measures, for example, steel reinforcement, primary structure built to MSCP, whatever year, primary structure built to gold, So those are the way rules built according to national code, well-connected structure, still reinforced the way build the elements. And then for each of the measures, you can expand show description. So that's a short description of the measure. And then for each of the measures, you just click yes, no, or not. So for example, if the building was not constructed according to the CP 2015, you have to click no. There are some measures that are not applicable. For example, if you did not construct cheap, although it's in the construction code, if you have a building, that's not applicable. And then based on your responses here, it's almost like a questionnaire, and then that's where it takes the based on that individual. Maybe we can look at water hazards. So right now we're in the building, and then if you look at the water hazards, so for example, not a historically known natural water area. So projects in regulation areas, that being too big, you should answer. All in all, with technical verification. Again, as per mentioned, the verification needs to come from the engineer or architect with more than 10 years of experience. But as an additional layer, we can train a verifier within the insurance company that can help look at all of the factors and give you what you want to see.
So the verification comes from
So it depends on if we can partner, for example, with the insurance company, of course that will be the first our call if we're hiring someone as an in-house. But if you're going to hire an expert, there will be a cost third party. We don't really have professionals outside of our shop.
verifier can either third party or
It can be an in-house, but what we recommend, there are two layers to the verification. The first one is an in-house architect or engineer. The second verification will be
say what important then you don't
right.
you need to let's say for example inadequate protection system. You can indicate which part of provision has been violated. So in pag nag-assess ko kasi generally sa rito.
Yes.
Can't legal insert ka, pero you're looking at all the disciplines. So it's important. I don't think license major requirement that when you assess dapat may basic.
So in your organization, sir, you have specialists for each of the other categories.
Generalist naman eh.
Generalists.
Kasi you cannot hire all the engineers.
Right, exactly.
But we study all the engineering disciplines applicable to a building. Kasi kung nagpunta ka sa isang building, civil lang katitig. Oh, hindi. You need to know everything.
Yeah. And we encourage insurance companies to do your own, to have your own verifier.
Yeah, kailangan. Otherwise, provide yung provide.
Yeah, of course.
So you need to be generally who studies to different fields. No? Pero in general, ang mga assets are all general.
Yeah. Well, again, the insurance company, still up to you, no? Your confidence level is verification. If you feel the need to have additional layers of verification, then of course, kailangan naman. Yeah, so how about from our friends at IIAM? I understand there are students here. No? All right. Okay, so if you have other questions, we'll share with you our contact details, and then we encourage you to please exchange business cards with us. If we have an attendance list, we can send the presentations and other resources via email. And again, we hope that this will not be a one-time event. We hope to visit in your offices, see how we can improve our goal, and also maybe become part of your member process. And hope to also develop this for you. With one another. So looking forward to working with you. Again, thank you so much for your time today, and hope to meet you again in future meetings. So we'll just be here if you want to approach us with other.
Thank you, Angelo. And maybe we can call on Mr. Jay Montes, the project manager for BRI, and from Resilient Philippines, for the closing remarks. And then after this, ladies and gentlemen, refreshments are served outside, please. And you'd have more time to engage with our speaker and his team. All right, Jay.
Thank you, Sir Mitch. Thank you also, Angelo and Pearl, for the presentation. Well, I won't be taking much of your time. I know we already had so much information about building resilience index and what it can do, how it can help the insurance sector or the insurance industry in carrying out your roles or your jobs in towards nation building. But allow me just to close this session with these points. That we also wanted to emphasize that just like what Angelo mentioned or shared earlier, Building Resilience Index is actually a very holistic platform. It's as how he referred to it earlier, it's a one-stop shop for all of the stakeholders that are involved in the built ecosystem, and including the insurance industry. And we are hopeful that with PIRA members, hopefully after this session, owning and gaining better appreciation about Building Resilience Index, we will be able to actively campaign yung Building Resilience Index sa sarili nating network and even sa sarili nating mga projects. And hopefully, we'll be able to come up with strong case studies on how Building Resilience Index was really helpful, particularly in the insurance industry here in the Philippines. So that being said, I'd like also to encourage you to continue to coordinate with us. You may directly coordinate with Angelo and Pearl from the International Finance Corporation, or coordinate with Arise Philippines, or with PIRA, or with us from Resilient Philippines, who is actually also partner of IFC and World Bank in promoting and mobilizing different sectors in the built ecosystem for the implementation or use of the Building Resilience Index. We also took note of your questions, very, very good questions. Maraming salamat po for raising those questions and concerns. Those are really very helpful para we can still improve on how we are going to mobilize other sectors para po dito sa ating Building Resilience Index, and to also understand and gain better appreciation on how the insurance sector sees the implementation and the use of PRI as a platform. So would also like again to thank IFC, International Finance Corporation, represented here by Angelo and Pearl, for their time and for the knowledge that they provided to us, not just through the BRI, but even on how IFC works here in the Philippines. And also to Arise Philippines, represented here by Cha and some of her colleagues who are attending now virtually on Zoom. And also to Yusek Alex Pama, the co-chair of Arise Philippines. Maraming salamat po for your contribution and active participation po, involvement in the project. And of course to PIRA, headed by Sir Mitch Reliosa, our Executive Director of PIRA. Maraming salamat po. And to our Deputy Commissioner of the Insurance Commission, Attorney Eric Zumbalmes. Thank you very much also for gracing us with your presence in this event. Again, maraming salamat po to all of you who attended and to all of our participants from the virtual space. Thank you again. We are hoping that this is not the last time that we will be seeing you and we'll be having discussions with you so far as the VRI platform is concerned. But we hope na in the future, in the coming months, we'll be able to conduct hopefully one-on-one sessions, technical sessions with your individual organization or insurance companies you're representing today or this afternoon. Maraming salamat po on behalf of Resilient Philippines. Thank you again at Mabuhay Tayo Manati. We have a Resilient Philippines. Thank you.
Okay, before we serve Merienda, can we please all come from for a last picture? Proof of that. Let us know. So this falls under so before we slow down. Yeah, hopefully we can have more.
More in depth the measures and also how the really looks like minutes of para makita natin yung output.
Sorry, Commissioner. Sorry.